All right, terrific. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 18th, 2023 community webinar for the draft zoning code, the draft zoning map, and the environmental impact statement. We will get into what this evening entails in just a moment, but before we do that, I want to turn it over to my wonderful colleagues to introduce themselves, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we will get started. I'll start with Doreen.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Doreen Kirkmeyer. A lot of you know me, and I'm recognizing a lot of names here. I am retired, but I'm working on this project because it's such an important project, and I have a lot of experience with it, obviously. But I am the former manager of planning, and also I spent some time as manager of zoning in my career as well. So welcome. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Doreen. Johanna?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Johanna Brennan. I'm an attorney with the City Law Department. I also have a long history with zoning. I was counsel to our City Planning Commission for a number of years and have now counsel to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and have been working on this project since the beginning. And I'll now hand over to Kevin.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin Kelly. I'm the manager of the Office of City Planning, and our team is sort of co-managing this project with Matt and his team in zoning. So glad that you all could be here tonight. We hope this is a useful session for everyone.
Thank you all very much. This is a great team we have here. My name is Matt Simonis. I also, like Doreen mentioned a whole lot of names on this list. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt. I am currently have the privilege of serving as the City of Rochester's manager of zoning. For those that don't know me, I was involved in the zoning office for a number of years in various roles, staffing the Zoning Board of Appeals, a brief time staffing the Preservation Board, as well as several other operational things that needed to be carried out. I left the office for a brief time before being asked to return to the office in this role. So that is my story and why I am here. So we're going to go ahead and get started and set the stage for the evening, let everyone know what's going on, and go from there. So as I said, we are in the community webinar draft zoning code, map, and environmental impact statement, the zoning alignment project, or ZAP as it's better known. So here's the webinar purpose. I want to let everyone know what we're here for tonight and set the stage so folks know what to expect or what not to expect. So the purpose of this webinar, and we were very strategic about structuring how we wanted to release this latest round, was to, this webinar is to orient the community to the draft code, the draft map, and the environmental impact statement. What that means is letting you know where you can find it, how to look at it, and really dig into it so you can provide very well-reasoned comments as part of this process. We will outline the process for reviewing the draft documents that we're discussing here this evening. And really, the third one is almost most important here. It is to prepare the community for the open house meetings in November. So what we currently have planned is like I said, this webinar, which will orient folks to what they're looking at, how to look at it, how to comment, what the next steps are, and things of that nature. In November, we have 3 in-person open house style meetings, one at the Edgerton Center, one at the Ryan Center, and one downtown at the Rundell Library. If you are looking for that in-person back and forth question and answer, in-person type interaction, those are the meetings for you. I do want to let everyone know that the presentations at those meetings will more or less be what you see this evening. It'll be comparable to this, but the activities following the presentation at the in-person meetings are really what are going to be critical. So if you're here tonight and you plan on joining us in an in-person meeting, you may hear a lot of the same stuff as part of the presentation, but the activities following the in-person meetings are really going to be the more in-person interactions. For those of you that have been through several rounds previously as part of this project, you'll remember there were small groups at tables where you could point to a map and ask questions about what you're seeing, what you're not seeing, what certain districts mean, and things of that nature. So there will be a similar format as part of the open house meetings as we move into November. And then in December and January, there are 2 scheduled Environmental Commission public hearings, the Rochester Environmental Commission, and those will happen in City Council chambers. We will keep the website updated so everyone knows dates, times. They're on there now, so you can take a look. You can take a look at that. So again, to reiterate, the purpose this evening is really to orient the community as to what they're looking at. If you are looking for that in-person, back and forth conversational piece, that really is the in-person meetings that we have planned. And like I said, those are listed right on the website. So the webinar format, we of course have already given our welcoming remarks and introductions. I'll be giving an overview of the zoning alignment project, what it is. Many of you know what it is. Some of you may not, which was the purpose of this webinar, to capture as many people as possible, to give them an introduction also to what the zoning alignment project is. There will be questions submitted through the chat. So on your screen now, you can see there's, for folks who may not know, there's a chat at the bottom of your screen. That's where you can enter comments. We will be doing our best, the team that you just met, to answer questions as much as possible. It would, of course, be our preference to focus on process and really let folks know how they can get involved. We understand there's a lot of questions. We understand people have a lot of opinions. We understand another group of people have opinions that are different from those opinions. So we'll get into that a little bit in the presentation. And then the last bullet point on your screen there, the unanswered questions will inform a frequently asked questions on ZAP website. So what we're planning for right now for questions that we need to find out more information from, or something we need to look into, we will do our best to address those as part of this webinar this evening. So the Zoning Alignment Project Overview, or ZAP, is a rewriting of the zoning code and revising of the zoning map. We'll get into that a little bit more, what that means. Key step in implementing Rochester 2034 Comprehensive Plan in 2019. I have no doubt there are a lot of you on this call that participated in the neighborhood-based meetings or developer meetings or some sort of stakeholder meeting as part of the comprehensive plan leading up to the adoption in 2019. For those of you that did, you know that process informed the step that we're in now, which is an update, rewriting of the zoning code and revising of the map. The zoning alignment project began promptly after the adoption of Rochester 2034, which was March of 2020. In 2020, once we all got used to using Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and we were getting into COVID at that time, we organized multiple community and stakeholder meetings conducted through 2021, or excuse me, in 2020, and then through 2021, and of course, a bunch of in-person meetings in 2022. Keep in mind that the Rochester 2034 process, 2 of those team members, Doreen and Kevin, on this call now, kudos to them for the extensive outreach they did as part of the comprehensive plan, because that work in the comprehensive plan was really, or is really, I should say, what is driving this process. A lot of decision points occurred as part of Rochester 2034, and what is in that document is really what is driving this. So this project, again, to summarize, is not new. We've been at this for a number of years now, and we are now in this phase of releasing the full draft code, full draft map, and environmental impact statement. Our website launched in 2021. Community input portal, subscription option, updated information on projected meetings. So what that means is there's been an input portal active since 2021 on the website. We'll show you that in a bit. There's a subscription option. If you're not subscribed to that, you can sign up, and we send out blast emails, excuse me, to folks on that listserv to inform them of upcoming steps. For those of you that are on that, you know you got one for this meeting. And so that's probably what brought you here this evening. In 2022, partial drafts of code and map were released in several batches. Those batches were released. There were community meetings in 2022. Several public meetings in consultation with City Planning Commission, which is the ZAP Steering Committee. So of course, this has also been going on for years. The City Planning Commission will also be the entity that needs to make a recommendation to ultimately to City Council for adoption of a new zoning code. So just keeping in mind that we, as the zoning alignment project team, do not make laws. We put together proposals based on a balanced approach of what we have heard to submit for recommendation to City Council. So at this critical juncture here, we have released the full draft code, map, and generic environmental impact statement, which was live on the website September 20th. So because the first two batches were already out, releasing the third batch was essentially releasing the full draft code, which is why we're here this evening. Keeping in mind that changes were made for the first two batches as a result of community input. So we really felt it was critical for the community to review the third batch in context with the first two, because changes were made, which brings us to batch 1, 2, and 3 equaling the full draft code. Currently looking at a target completion date in late 2024. If you look at a calendar, you can see that's a year from now. So nothing is going to City Council this month. I can promise you that. So just keeping that in mind, there's a series of steps that still need to occur before we proceed with the recommendation from City Planning Commission. I'm going to take the next 2 slides to go over some of the zoning alignment project goals. And I encourage you to remember that these goals are not absolute statements. Writing a zoning code or updating a zoning code, writing any code is a very nuanced process, because there are implications that must be cross-checked against other sections of code. So just keeping that in mind. So of course, the first one, aligning the code and the map with Rochester 2034. I've spoken about the comprehensive plan informing this process, where a lot of critical decision points were previously made. So of course, not only is it New York State law to align the code and map with your comprehensive plan, it's the right thing to do. Improve map consistency. So improving map consistency involves applying a series of criteria or logic before choosing which given area may need to be, which zoning district it may need to be in. So by way of example, we can look at this not being the only thing, but one of them, the built form of the area. What does the built form look like? What built form should inform a boutique mixed use district? So that's what improving the map consistency means. Expand and diversifying housing choices. This is a big one. There's a lot of talk in the community about housing and the need for housing and what that looks like from a zoning code standpoint. Keeping in mind that the zoning code does not build housing in no way, shape, or form, but it does set the stage for the potential to build housing in terms of what the community needs. The encouragement of reoccupation of vacant homes and buildings. It's no secret to anyone there are vacant homes or vacant structures throughout the city, and the reoccupation of those buildings are critical for many neighborhoods for stability purposes. They're also critical for other reasons that are important to the city. So that's another goal. Increasing economic opportunity is, of course, a large one in terms of goals as well. Encourage critical mass needed to support local businesses. So again, zoning code does not open businesses. It sets the stage for the potential to open business. As a zoning code practitioner for many years now, and now in this role, I talk to many folks from both Monroe County, Rochester and Monroe County, as well as nationally, where people look to open businesses. And sometimes they call and sometimes they don't call. They just go right to the code and map to see if something's permitted. So that's another big piece there. And then improve code functionality. As a zoning code practitioner, this might actually be my favorite. What we don't have now, we are proposing, which is a use chart. It's right on the website. It is a fantastic tool. Folks very often come in and say, I own this building. What can I do with it? Well, currently you have to go district by district in the text to see what uses are permitted, specially permitted, or not permitted. So now we have a use table with all of the zoning districts at the top, all of the uses on the side, and you can dig right in very easily as a community member, as a small business owner, as a design professional, as a land use attorney, as a resident, as a property owner, and see exactly what you can and can't do. It's a fantastic tool, and I think it's going to be a huge improvement as it relates to building permits in the city of Rochester. The next slide, increase area dedicated to a mix of uses. One of the best examples of this is the introduction of a new zoning district that is called flexible mixed use. I have jokingly referred to it as the Village Gate zoning district because folks tend to know what that means. It is the legacy industrial buildings that exist mostly along the rail corridor, but not always, that have really been converted over time or attempted to be converted over time to a mix of uses, to restaurants, to offices, to event venues, to things of that nature. The thought here is that much of this was already happening, and there's a lot of benefits to residents in terms of quality of life in the city and being able to walk to uses. So it's important to know that that is also a goal. Reduce nonconformities. So currently the 2003 map, which is currently in effect, sought to significantly downzone areas for a number of reasons, which we don't need to get into here. But what it did is it left a lot of what we call nonconformities, which simply means the building is used for or was built as a use which is no longer permitted in the zoning district. The map changed and the use is no longer allowed. Reducing nonconformities has a couple different impacts. One of the significant ones that we hear from potential buyers of these properties, as well as potential developers of these properties, is that they have a hard time getting financing, for example. The banks are interested in getting documents that say buildings or uses are fully in compliance with the zoning code before they lend money or loan money to do the redevelopment. And so if you are a mixed use building in a residential district, we of course can't issue that as a result of the fact that it's considered non-conforming. So the reduction of nonconformities has several layers to it. I know it'll be a conversation for many of our in-person meetings, and we'll definitely have those conversations about what that means and how there are still protections built into the code to protect against adverse impacts of the reduction in nonconformities. Align land use patterns with the transit system. So of course, our transit system is the RTS, which recently, I guess not so recently, it's a number of years now, went through the Reimagine RTS, which is the final version of the existing transit system. So, this is not a perfect science. It's not that we looked at every transit line and put all of those properties on that transit line into one zoning district. It was one consideration. We looked at other things like the built form. What is the existing built form? But it is one piece of understanding that it is important because for any residents that are moving in and to encourage people to use our transit system to reduce dependency on cars, aligning the zoning code for focusing the density along those is important. Increasing climate change resiliency, of course, a large piece of the zoning code. You'll see that as it relates to the facilitation of green infrastructure techniques, making it easier, accounting for them. Some of the new ones aren't even accounted for in our existing code, so that's an important piece. Modernize the code to address emerging trends. This team that I work with every day has heard this story many times. I remember I was at the building permit counter when a building owner came in to establish the first axe throwing bar. Well, for those of you that understand, zoning means we have to classify the use first to see where it's permitted. I can promise you our current zoning code does not have an axe throwing bar use. So modernizing the code to address emerging trends involves clumping a series of commercial uses into one definition, not all, just some, where we can then not have to update the code every time a new use comes. And this is really critically important because it takes a legislative action to update the code. But we also recognize there are many, many commercial uses and others that do have adverse impacts. And so they're not included in that broad stroke definition. Above all, balance. I am going to spend just a brief moment on this one. You will hear me, you will hear Doreen, Kevin, and Johanna talk about this a lot. Balance. There are a lot of people and stakeholders in this city that have a lot of opinions and a lot of feelings as to what they feel should happen. And they have made it known to me, and they let me know when I'm in the community. They let me know through email. And I can promise you, I then get followed up with the exact opposite opinion, someone telling me that they're in the right. It is my job, it is all of our jobs as a public servant to create a balanced code which takes into account these essentially competing factions of what folks think or feel a zoning code should be. So keep this in mind when you're providing comments. We are excited to have these conversations because putting the code out there for a draft is where the community gets to say, hey, I noticed this. Is this what you meant? Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Maybe there's an impact that someone needs to make us aware of. So my ask to all of you is to remember that our goal is to create a balance. It is critically important, and it's critically important for many reasons. So keep that in mind as we proceed here with public comments. With that, I am going to play a brief video here so you all can have a break from hearing my voice. This video is a fantastic introductory to what zoning is, what zoning isn't, and then I will talk a little bit about it after the video is done.
Matt, I don't think the audio is working. You might have to reshare your screen with that option checked of sharing the audio with the sharing.
I will do that right now. Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
Why it is important to everyone. The City of Rochester is updating its zoning code. But what does that really mean for you and your neighborhood? Here's a quick lesson on what zoning is and why it is important to everyone. Zoning assists a community as it grows by regulating land use and determining the ideal locations for development, taking into account things like transportation networks, nearby businesses, residential neighborhoods, and green spaces. Zoning regulates different land use categories for how land can be used and developed. These categories include residential, commercial, industrial, and recreational uses found in zoning districts. Zoning districts are like the puzzle pieces, each relating to different kinds of land uses. When all of those pieces are put together, they help form the city we live in. As with puzzle pieces, each zoning district has unique characteristics, but each is designed to connect and fit with the pieces around it. Zoning regulates the types of the uses allowed in different districts, but also the way buildings can be built and where they can be located on a property. Development standards such as building size, building height, and how far a building must be set back from the property lines are part of zoning regulations. Your vision for our city helps shape Rochester 2034, which provides long-term growth policies and development goals for the future. The zoning code helps move us closer to making that vision a reality. We want to be a vibrant, healthy, inclusive, beautiful, and resilient community where people are engaged and thriving. The new zoning code will encourage the development of interesting, livable, and dynamic neighborhoods where all residents have access to housing, work, services, recreation, and places that enhance their quality of life. This means providing flexibility for diverse types of housing and businesses to share space in neighborhoods, while also preserving the unique character of each neighborhood. The zoning code is just one of many tools used by municipalities to work towards city goals and objectives. If you have questions about zoning, contact the city zoning office at 428-7043. For more information on the rewrite of the city zoning code, please visit www.rochesterzap.com.
Okay, so hopefully that was helpful to some folks, and it broke up the monotony of listening to me talk. So I want to dig into that a little bit more here with what is zoning. So as you just heard, it guides growth and patterns of development in a thoughtful way to protect health, safety, and welfare of residents, business owners, and visitors. The zoning map consists of zoning districts that guide how land can be used. And it provides regulations for use of land, establishes procedures for reviewing and approving development. So what all of that means is you will find in the use table a list of permitted uses in each district. You will find a list of specially permitted uses, and you will find a list of uses that are not permitted. So what that means is uses that are permitted as of right, provided they meet all use regulations applicable with them. They are something that gets issued at our building permit counter by staff. Professional staff conduct a review, ensure that the code is met, and issue the building permit. Specially permitted uses are uses that are thought to be permissible, but may have some unique impact on an area or a neighborhood that require an additional layer of review, and those uses go to the City Planning Commission. An example of that would be, for example, a drive-through immediately adjacent to a residential district. There are impacts in the sense of the queuing lane, the speakers, menu board signs, and things of that nature. And the last are uses that are not permitted, and that's when you see a variance. Those uses that are not permitted go to the Zoning Board of Appeals if they're not permitted in a district for what's called a use variance, where an applicant has to prove that there is a financial hardship on the property, not the individual, but the property itself, making the argument that it cannot realize a practicable financial return on the property unless they use it for a use that's not permitted in the district. So they're essentially making an application showing they cannot realize a financial return for using it for any other use permitted in the district. So of course, this is oftentimes neighborhood specific, market specific. So there's a lot of economics associated with that. So again, zoning is a tool that guides the growth and patterns of development based on what I just said. When I say a thoughtful way, it is attempts to also build in mitigation features. For example, if something is permitted as of right. And it consists of districts that guide how land can be used. You'll see a couple photos on the right side of the screen, some of the buildings I'm sure most, if not all of you recognize, where you'll see detached homes in the rear of the top photo, but development happening in the front part of the photo. So drawing the line of where a zoning map is where this piece really comes into play and is important. Zoning code contents, permitted uses of land organized by district. I just touched on that a little bit. There are use standards associated with it. By way of example, there are required landscaped setbacks for certain auto-related uses so that the cars are not pulling up immediately adjacent to the public right-of-way, which creates hazards with pedestrians. It also mitigates the number of interactions between vehicles and pedestrians on the sidewalk and other cars. So those are use standards. Those are additional requirements that must be met by an applicant, even if the use in fact is permitted as of right. There are dimensional and design standards by district. So dimensional, you heard a little bit about in the video, setbacks. There are required setbacks, both front, side, rear yard setbacks. Those are dimensional requirements that run along with such use. And also design standards. What do we want to see? How does the building interact with the public right-of-way? Does it have windows? Is it inviting? Is it a blank wall along a major corridor, not making it inviting for people to walk or otherwise be in the neighborhood? So those are the design standards at a high level to think about. There are development standards, for example, residential conversions, lighting, fences. One of the big ones for residential conversions are what we call dwelling unit conversion standards. So if you're in a medium density residential district and a property owner would like to increase the number of dwelling units in the property, even if it's permitted, there are additional requirements they have to meet, and those are called dwelling unit conversion standards. Those include things like a minimum lot size, a minimum unit size, things that protect against undesirable changes to be cognizant of the rest of the area. So those are development standards. Requirements for parking, landscaping, which I touched on, signs. So businesses that open all are required to get a building permit if they want to put up signs, because there are regulations associated with signs, how much signage you can have, and where is it located on the building. There are administrative and procedural requirements for boards. So those are the zoning board that I've mentioned, the city planning commission. And that's the process by which applications that go before these boards are heard. And those are procedural requirements that are associated with those. Other board is the, of course, preservation board. There are application and development review procedures. So when a property owner or developer makes an application to do something, how we as staff in the office are required to deal with that application and respond to it, and timeframes and things of that nature. Regulations for non-conforming uses and structures. I touched on this a little bit earlier. Something to also look at. What does it mean to reactivate a vacant church in a residential district? What does it mean to reactivate a vacant storefront building in a storefront in a mixed-use building in a residential district? Those are the regulations associated with non-conforming uses and non-conforming structures. The next one on the list, the second to last there, is a very large topic we have heard from the community about, to the extent that we included a section of it in our environmental impact statement, which is enforcement. Right, so there's the code, but then there's the enforcement of the code, and what does that look like, and what steps is the city taking to ensure that with a new code, it is being enforced properly, that the mitigation factors are being implemented to protect against adverse impacts. That is a big piece of the code, like I said, that is included in our environmental impact statement, so I encourage you to read that. Definitions and rules of measurement. I touched earlier on defining uses. It's our job to first define a use when it comes into the permit counter, so that we can find out which district it is located in and how we are able to approve that. So this is an example of the draft zoning map, which we will get into in just a few minutes here, a little more so, but I just wanted to put this image up on here. It really tells the story of our city in the proposed zoning district. So on the left side of your screen are the draft zoning districts. We'll show you in just a little bit, there are some general equivalents to the existing districts, to what's being proposed in the new code. But just keeping in mind that even if there's a general equivalent, there may be regulations that are different within that district. The one district that I touched on earlier that is new is the flexible mixed use, which is listed here. If you take a look at the map, downtown, of course, being in the center of the city, with the goldish color being the high density, the darker yellow being the medium density, and the lightest yellow you see on the screen being the lowest density. Really, the goal here with downtown being the center of both the city as well as the region as a whole is that density really should be concentrated in our center city. And as you work your way out toward the municipal boundaries on all sides of the city, that's really where the built form turns to more single family and of course non-conforming uses mixed in, but that's really where the lowest density of the city is located, is out toward the outer edges before the transition into the neighboring suburban towns. The draft generic environmental impact statement. This describes the project. It describes the need for it, the potential negative impacts, as well as mitigation measures to avoid or reduce impacts. I touched on this a little bit more, allowing maybe a new use in an area, but building in mitigation measures to ensure that adverse impacts do not impact quality of life for residents. The contents and the procedures are regulated by New York State law. This is part of the State Environmental Quality Review Act process, or SEQRA, for those of you that are familiar with that. An EIS, or Environmental Impact Statement, is generic when the project involves a broad-based project, such as a new zoning code. It's more conceptual, it's not site-specific. This project involves updating a code for potential new development. It is not specific to a development. So that's where the word generic comes in when you see the generic environmental impact statement. It identifies changes made to current code and map and explains why those changes are made. I cannot stress this enough. I have stressed the balance that the code is seeking to create. I cannot stress enough that the environmental impact statement is such an important document for everyone to read because it answers the why. There are plenty of folks who have gone through this and been able to get their questions answered because the answers are in there, right? So one thing to remember is that we are required to do this, but it's also a tremendous resource to be able to go in there and find out why something is being proposed and the potential reasoning for it. It is a rather long document, but if your interest is specific to a district, you can dig right into that and find out more about that. It also explains why we're proposing this draft code. It explains the reasoning behind it. It explains all of the steps. It is really, really a critical document. And it's significantly important for people to read in the sense of understanding what's happening. We will, of course, have these in-person conversations at our public meetings, but reading that document is critically important for everyone. This is an image of the website that we have. We have outlined here, there's a public comment portal on the top. If you clicked contact, on the top ribbon of the web page. Under documents and presentation, you will find links to all of the documents available for review. You'll also find information. You'll also find updates. For those of you that get updates from our email blast, you will also find the same email blast listed on the documents and presentations. And the in-person information meetings that I mentioned, the Edgerton R Center, November 8th, 2023, the Ryan R Center, November 16th, 2023, and the Rundell Library on November 29th. And it is listed in more detail on the website, but it is in the Rundell Library, the third floor of the auditorium on that floor. Also public hearings scheduled, City Hall, December the 5th of 2023, and then again in City Hall on January 17th of 2024. And these are will be held with the Rochester Environmental Commission. It is really, really important for folks to understand that those public hearings are the only place that oral comments will be received. In my role, I have conversations with residents, neighborhood groups, property owners on a daily basis, and no one can possibly remember all the things that are said. So everything either needs to be in writing through this portal that we're showing here. It needs to be in writing addressed to myself at the City Hall. That information is on the website, as well as the cover of the environmental impact statement, or oral comments as part of those public hearings where they will be recorded, and we can accept those as part of the process. And again, those are December 5th and January 17th. Keeping in mind that we are keeping this public comment period open far beyond the 30-day New York State requirement, with everything released September 20th, going through the end of January. It puts us at about 4.5 months for folks to review everything. And as I said earlier on in this webinar, we were very strategic about structuring how we want to do this to be able to give an introduction and set the stage for people to bring these comments back to either their neighbors or their neighborhood organization or some other organization that they're a part of, so that they can tell the story of what is happening if they were not able to be here tonight. And of course, this will be posted just as a reminder for folks that were not able to be here. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Kevin, the manager of the Office of City Planning, to talk a little bit about the interactive zoning map.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. And I will share my screen here. I'm actually going to leave my camera off just in case that helps with the connection speed as I'm zooming around these maps here. So give me one moment. Okay. Is this visible now?
It is. It says it's started screen sharing, so it looks like it's loading right now.
Oh, it's loading. Yeah. Let me know when it pops up on your end, and then I can
Terrific. We'll do that.
dig into it. Sorry that it's moving slow. That is strange. I don't know why it's not.
Just loaded for us. We are
Okay.
on the main page of the ZAP website.
Perfect. Sorry for the delay, everyone. So what I'll do is I'll give you kind of a tour of the online mapping resources that we have made available for folks to review the draft map. But I'm actually going to start on the main page of the Zoning Alignment Project website so you can see how to get to it. Basically, you go to rochesterzap.com, and then if you go over here at the top to documents and presentations, there's all kinds of resources here that are available to folks for review, including what we've been talking about tonight. So under the draft code document section, you've got the documents that Matt has been referring to, the code itself, the draft generic environmental impact statement, and then the maps are down here. So you've got this category of interactive online maps that I'm going to show you live here. And then you also have this section here of PDFs of the maps. Some folks would prefer to print them out. And there are links here to PDFs for folks to be able to do that. But I will show you the online version for folks that want to review it. And that way, so if you clicked on the draft zoning map, it'll take you to this site. So let me give you a tour. I'm not going to be talking about any of the substance of the map, content of the map, or any of the decisions or anything like that, just a tour of how things are organized. So on the left-hand side is just sort of a narrative description of what the map is about, how to use it, that sort of thing. And that's this info tab over here. If you look in the upper left-hand corner of my cursor, you switch to the layer list. These are all the different layers of data that are in the map itself, and you can turn them on and off with these checkboxes. And you'll notice that as you make changes over here, it actually affects the legend. The legend shows you the symbology for all of the layers that are currently active. So let's say, for example, you're really only interested in these base zoning districts and not too concerned about the overlays, which is very special circumstances. I'm going to turn off all these overlays, and they then disappear from the legend as I turn them off. And the legend then reflects that. Here are your base zoning districts, and that's just the core of the map here. So just like Google Maps, you can zoom in and out, you can pan around to look on things, but then it has this additional layer of interactivity where you can click on things to learn more. So for example, maybe I'm interested in this area here. This is for the medium yellow. You see over here is the lighter yellow. This is a medium yellow, and then this is the darker. So that's low density, medium density, high density residential, as you see in the legend. I want to learn more about medium density residential, so I'll click on it, and a little window pops up, and it tells you the purpose statement for that particular district. And it can also take you to more information from Rochester 2034, the section of the comprehensive plan that talks about the medium density residential district as sort of the visionary basis for that district. Now, just a functionality thing here. Let's say I turn on an overlay district here, or maybe the urban renewal district. If you click on an area that has more than one layer, so here you've got the sort of the light purple of downtown, and then the darker purple outline of a urban renewal district. If I click on that area, you'll notice that the box actually has two results because there's two districts here. At the top here, it says 1 out of 2. The first is looking at the Cascade Area URD and the purpose statement for that. If you want to look at downtown, which is underneath it, you just click this little arrow to go to result 2 of 2. And there's your downtown district, and you can read more about that. That's how this sort of interactive component works for the online ZAP map. You'll notice too, like like Matt has talked about, you could discover what the district is that for the area that you're interested in this case, medium density residential, but that doesn't tell the whole story of what MDR is all about. A huge part of that is the actual use table, the list of uses that are permitted. And if you go back to the sort of the info tab or the about tab that's talked about in the narrative here, it says click here to see a draft use table. So that will pull up a PDF of the use table so you can learn more about what is actually permitted in the MDR. So that orients you to everything that's contained in the online map. Now let me show you the second map here, where it says the swipe map. We find this to be a really helpful tool, opens up a different tab. The swipe map shows kind of the before and after, if you will. So it's just a different version of the map, and it has this swipe bar here that you can grab with your mouse and drag to the left or to the right. On the left-hand side of the bar, and corresponding with what's shown in the legend over here, are existing zoning districts. That is the current zoning district map that is in play right now. On the right-hand side of the bar shows the proposed zoning district. So that's the draft ZAP map on the right side. So if you are interested in a particular area, you just zoom in and go to that area to see sort of the before and after. And this is useful when you're looking at maybe specific properties or specific corridors or neighborhoods to see how things have changed. And that will help inform some of your understanding of the code and perhaps some of the comments that you want to submit about, again, maybe about an entire area or maybe about a specific property. We welcome all of that feedback. So that is kind of a tour of the maps. Matt or anyone else on the team, is there anything else that I should touch on as long as we're looking at the maps?
No, I think that was great. One thing to point out, I just want to reiterate what Kevin said. Such a fantastic, as easy as possible for people to go through the information and be able to and click and link into the code and look at what that means. So that was terrific. Thank you. If no other comments from the team here, I will jump back to my presentation. Thank you, Kevin.
Sure.
Okay, so jumping back over to the presentation here. Hard copies available. Where can you get a hard copy? As we have indicated numerous times here, all of the documents are available online. Some folks may want to see hard copies. They are at all city library branches, as well as the central library downtown. They are not in circulation, but you are, of course, welcome to go in and take pictures on your phone of pages that you want, or spend some time with it in person, write some things down. They are at all of our neighborhood service centers. So those are in the Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, and Southwest. Hard copies of both documents are located there, as well as the City Hall permit counter. There is also a full-size draft map located within the permit office of City Hall. For those that have not been there, it is in room 121B. And that is the first floor of the addition off the back of the main building of City Hall. There's also a full draft map located in the front part of City Hall. Right at the entrance, you can go in, look at it. If you have questions, there is a hard copy of that there as well. How to comment. This is a big one. I know everyone wants to comment and we want to hear from you. So written comments are submitted through the comment portal on the website, which I showed earlier. You click contact at the top of the page in the ribbon there, and you can submit everything in writing there. And what's important there also is you can click to have the email that you send to also send to yourself. And that's important too, so then it's been received. Comment cards at the November open houses. We'll have that available there, as well as U.S. Postal Service mail. You can mail it directly to my attention. My name and address are on the screen there, and that is also on the website, as well as the front of the environmental impact statement, if you need to find it to mail in comments. And as I've indicated earlier, verbal or oral comments are presented at the Rochester Environmental Commission public hearings only. not at the in-person meetings, not when you see me in the hall at City Hall. The oral ones are only in the public hearings, both December 5th and January 17th. And a lot of folks I've talked to, I've said, look, submit your comments in the portal or put them in writing to me. We will collect them. And then once the public comment period closes, we on January 31st, as it says on the screen there, we will dig into every comment. I can promise you we have discussed every comment received to date. And they have created great conversations, and they are in many ways, or in some ways, I should say, reflected in the code. I can guarantee you that comments you have submitted are likely reflected in the code. Just because your comments are not reflected in the code or reflected in the map, it does not mean we didn't receive it. It does not mean we didn't discuss it. It comes back to the balance where we are charged with, which we are charged with creating. So I want to make that real clear to everyone. We love getting the comments, and writing is the best way, right through the website. And we do go through every one and discuss them and apply, a series of criteria to talk about, what is a substantive comment that may result in a change to either the map or the code. So we will take a few minutes here. We have some time before the planned 8 p.m. wrap up here. Before we get into that, the Zoning Matters poster that's on your screen, you may have seen it. It is around City Hall. It should also be at the neighborhood service centers, as well as the city branch libraries. It is one more way by which we are seeking to reach as many people as possible. You will see on there that zoning is important for a number of reasons. Of course, chief among them, realizing Rochester 2034, the city's master plan. Living and working near a bus line, a huge factor for many residents. Having stores and restaurants nearby, what that looks like, what are the additional regulations in allowing them. Allowing community gardens, which is a huge piece that we have heard from the community over the years that this project has been ongoing. Getting that old building in your neighborhood redeveloped. As I said, zoning does not redevelop property, but what zoning does is it sets the stage to allow property to be redeveloped. And that's important because we have seen situations where the zoning district has in some ways prevented buildings from getting redeveloped. I indicated earlier, sometimes there's financing issues or sometimes there's other issues associated with getting it redeveloped. But again, reminding everyone that that's also our role to create a balanced approach in getting there. And then ensuring your neighborhood has attractive buildings with doors and windows facing the street. The standard urban environment of having windows facing out, buildings built to the sidewalk, a direct pedestrian connection into uses is critically important so that folks are not walking across wide open parking lots to be able to get into a service or retail store that they're looking to get into. So your zoning code can help make these things happen. It is being rewritten now. Learn more. The website is on there, rochesterzap.com. If you would like a copy of this, you can certainly let us know, and we can assist with having that. We can make that happen. So that being said, I want to just take a moment to thank everyone for joining. I'm sure there are a lot of burning questions. Please know that we will respond to as many as we can. Some of your comments may be more appropriate for an in-person, face-to-face conversation at one of our in-person meetings. We encourage you to attend. We encourage you to tell your neighbors to attend, your organizations to attend, and we can really have those conversations there. So that being said, I am going to check in with my colleagues to see if there are some procedural or other items that I should address with the folks on the call.
I think that about covers it, Matt, and it's a lot of folks are submitting questions through the Q&A function of the Zoom call here. You could do that there or in the chat. Either one is fine, but yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that we might want to comment for some people that a lot of these detail-oriented questions would be better brought up at the in-person meetings, so we can really have a conversation about how we came to the conclusions that we had and how we might be able to change it going forward. but trying to write it real quick here in the chat or the question and answer is probably not going to do the issue the justice it deserves. So I'm looking at some of them coming up right now, and I think they're better off at the in-person meetings. I've tried to keep up with as many as I could during the meeting. There wasn't as many. They're popping in now, which is toward the end here. So
Yeah, and now that we're done with the presentation, we can tackle some of those verbally. Doreen, I appreciate that you've been typing
Yeah.
answers during the presentation. We could shift some of that verbally, but I think, like you said, some of them might be more useful or helpful conversations if they're in person, but we can kind of.
I mean, one of the questions was about if we could, a couple of questions were about, could we do a use table for the current code so that people could compare and contrast a new use code? My initial reaction to that was that's a very time-consuming process, because we'd have to go through, it's not a direct correlation between what's the current uses and how they're defined and the new uses. So we'd have to make that clarification, but it would be a difficult process. But I thought that if we had the time, we would certainly, give it a go if we could.
Yeah, that's a very understandable desire to sort of have an apples to apples comparison there, before and after comparison. We'd have to dig deeper to see just how much oranges would be left. And so there will still be some apples to oranges comparisons when you look at before and after, that would make such a side-by-side table not very helpful to anybody, because they don't correlate perfectly. There are certain things that would be easy to see, sort of the before and after things. It would be way too complex. But we could take a look at it as a team and see if there might be some elements that would be useful, and others that just wouldn't work very well in that kind of a framework.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, so, and just to piggyback off of what has already been said, so I have two thoughts. One, reading the environmental impact statement is critical in understanding a comparison, if that's what folks are interested in. It is addressed in there, as well as 2034 and some of the high level changes. But the other piece to remember, the administration of the zoning code is often not an apples to apples because of previous approvals. So what I mean by that is a property owner comes into our walk-in building permit counter to establish a use, establish a business, start a business. And what's important to understand is that if a previous, for example, use variance for the use was established, it may very well still be a use variance that's in effect, thereby the use can continue. So when looking at a comparison of apples to apples, it's oftentimes apples to oranges, because then I receive the phone call that says, that's not a permitted use in your use table. How did it get there? But, a decision was made in 1997 at the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing, for example, here, that the use could be there and it could continue in many ways, more or less, as long as it doesn't go vacant. So that's a very generic statement, but we look at a lot of documents because we are legally obligated to do so. Rochester is a almost 200-year-old city, 2034, hence the name. In it being built out, we are not starting from scratch. So applying a zoning code that would be starting from scratch in many ways sounds very inviting to me as the manager of zoning. However, we recognize that there are so many approvals previously granted to properties, and so we may need to actually we have to recognize that in applying the code. Now, that's not to say that none of this is important, because it is all important, and there's no guarantee of a previous variance being approved, for example, or a previous special use permit. So I think the best way has been summed up by taking a look at the environmental impact statement, as well as us as a team taking a look at what we can do and what we're able to put together. So
we have two more questions, or we have a couple of questions here that I can answer fairly easily. So the question is, how are Airbnbs classified? And they are called short-term rentals in the new code. They are not mentioned in the existing code. They are a use identified, and there are limits on those in terms of where they can be located in the city. And I think there's other standards we put in there, but for sure where they can be located. So that answers that question. Another question about, did the city's carbon reduction goals, were they considered? So if you look in the environmental impact statement, there's a section on sustainability, and we do reference directly the city's climate action plan and what some of the recommendations were and how they've been reflected in the zoning code. So yes, they were taken into consideration. Thus we have, bicycle parking and less parking requirements in the commercial districts. Those are all part of carbon reduction, but certainly we went directly to the climate action plan and discussed that. So please look at the environmental impact statement.
Dorian, there's a related question about short-term rentals that I think we could probably address.
Okay.
That they're noting that the draft code defines the STRs as non-owner occupied rentals, but what is the code saying about owner occupied short-term rentals? So let's say someone owns a double, they live in one half of it and they rent out the other half of it in the form of a short-term rental. That doesn't fit the definition of a short-term rental as far as this code is concerned, but we would define it or consider it a different use, which is regulated, and that would be a two-family, correct?
That is correct. If there are two separate units, then they're regulated as two different uses. If someone was doing, Airbnb type of a rental in their own owner-occupied home, then we'd probably call it a bed and breakfast. And but if it was a side-by-side, we would handle it as a separate use, and then it would be allowed in some areas of the city and it wouldn't be allowed in other areas. And that scenario, Kevin, that you're talking about might be something that people might want to make comments about, because we didn't directly address that particular scenario. It's a little hard to enforce something when you're talking about owner occupancy in that regard, because then the city's put in the place of keeping track of where there's owner occupants and that kind of thing. But anyway, it's something that if people feel strongly about that use being allowed or not allowed, they can certainly submit those comments.
I'm gonna try to answer, pick up where I can see where Doreen has answered some questions. I'm gonna try to pick up here on some of these. There's some comments in here which I think folks really should submit. These are comments that we would receive. Question about the changes from the map in 2034 approved by council. I assume the question is related to how different the zoning map is. What to remember here is that the placemaking plan in 2034 that was approved by council was not parcel level. It was high level with boundaries not fine-tuned. It was more generic in nature. So the map that is out there, the draft map that is out there, follows what was approved by city council, just not at a city council. The 2034 version is not parcel level. So what we did over the last several years ago now was sit down and go through and do an actual parcel level analysis for the entire city and where boundaries should be. And, there was a series of criteria for that related to what's existing, what's proposed, what is the built form of the area, and things of that nature. So it was 2034 is not parcel specific, but the map that you see is.
And that's I think that's the kind of thing that we have received a lot of feedback on, and we would welcome additional feedback on is kind of about the decisions that are made at the edges. So if you look at let's say the boundary between a low density residential and medium density residential area in the 2034 plan, it's sort of generalized, sort of visionary. We made as a team sort of judgment calls about more specific parcel by parcel where that boundary should land. But we welcome feedback from the community about, actually, I think that edge should be pushed a little bit to the south or a little bit to the north, or that sort of thing, because that's where sort of the judgment calls can be made about where that boundary should fall. Now, looking at it and say, I think it should be a completely different district or area, that's not necessarily in play because then it would be completely inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. But about massaging the edges, those are the types of conversations we want to have.
Additional questions here on parking minimums. Certainly a big topic. We encourage everyone to look at that. I have to give my plug to the 2003 code here that removed parking minimums in the Center City District as well as the Village Center District. So even 20 plus years ago, the city of Rochester was already moving in that direction. So we have expanded on that in our commercial districts. In the proposed code, we encourage anyone with comments to submit on that. There's a question of whether the EIS includes more detail on how zoning alignment project is improving transit access and non-car transit options more generally. I'll talk about that a little bit, and I don't know, Doreen, if you want to talk about the EIS. But yeah, so one of the things that we talked about, or I talked about earlier in the presentation, is aligning the potential for density to be along transit corridors to reduce the reliance on the automobile with the hope of dedicating less land to the automobile and more dedication to uses. So that's one thing we have done. We have looked at the RTS route map in order to do that.
Yeah, we also increased density allowances along our transit routes, especially, we also increased the allowances for residential along the what were traditionally considered commercial routes. So we really let the bus routes dictate where we did some of those density increases for zoning. There's another question about, there's a few questions about increasing the number of public meetings we're doing. We tried to, with 3 public meetings and then 2 public hearings, we thought that was sufficient, at least in terms of access. People can get to, all those meetings are all located strategically to get to as many number of people as we can, and trying to consider equity in that meeting access. And so, we can't add 5 meetings to the Southeast because people are requesting that. It's a staff issue, it's an equity issue, and obviously, you say, it's a clear strategy on our part on how we can do public meetings, and we have to consider staff time as well, and the staffing that we can get to these meetings. So, you should be able to get to one of those 3 meetings, the public meetings that we have lined up.
Yeah, keep in mind too, if you're, if you live in, the Beechwood neighborhood and you can't make the Ryan Center date, you're welcome to come to the downtown date. You're welcome to come to the Edgerton Center date, where you will hear much of this information again, and then you'll have the question back and forth. I'm going to take on a few more Q&As here. More questions about short-term rentals. Question was around an individual inferring some details regarding uses and restrictions of rental properties, which seems specific to short-term rentals. I think we answered that. It is specific to short-term rentals, not permanent rentals. And that is reflected in a definition as well as the use table as to where they are permitted and where they are not permitted. We have another comment about meetings, which Doreen just spoke about. We have the comment about the one that just came in about the active transportation plan and allowing small scale commercial uses in areas where residents live. And yes, as a matter of fact, one of the key changes to this code is the giving the pre-existing non-residential buildings in residential districts some allowed uses as of right or specially permitted uses, so that they can be, like Matt was talking about, so they can be more easily financed and more easily reoccupied, and to bring services directly into residential neighborhoods. So that's one of several
tactics we've that we've engaged here in the zoning code to try to get more small scale commercial uses. And we've also, and this is all in the impact statement, but we also worked on, what's that word, Kevin, that when you're talking about building business from home occupations up to bricks and mortar type of uses. We have a name for it, but I don't remember. I don't remember.
You mean a vertical mixed use?
No, just that process of the zoning code took into account that path for a business to sort of develop and build
the pipeline.
the pipeline business
Yeah.
development.
Yeah.
So we're starting with home occupations. We've allowed for live workspaces. We've got the non-conforming buildings, and there's other ways that we've tried to get. We've got commercial overlay districts and other things that try to bring those smaller scale commercials near residents.
Yeah, and really, I think at the core of that recommendation from the ATP, and I appreciate that was brought up because that's a really important plan. I think that the code is already doing that, and one could even make the case that the existing code is already doing that, encouraging opportunities for smaller scale commercial uses where many residents live, and that's primarily along our commercial mixed use corridors, and we're finding ways through the use table, how we classify uses, and that sort of thing to continue to allow for, or I should say, remove barriers to those projects happening. I mean, we've heard stories from the past where somebody couldn't start the business that they wanted to in a commercial area or mixed use area because there's just not enough room on the site to develop the required parking. So we've removed that requirement so that that's not going to hold back a business from developing on a property like that. But then if you get out and outside of those corridors into the residential side streets, that's a little bit of a different kind of a setting where we're not necessarily going to allow every imaginable commercial use on those residential side streets. You want to protect the character there, but they can be focused on the commercial corridors, and we can make allowances for them when it's, as Doreen said, it's a pre-existing commercial use. I always think of Rooney's, the restaurant, as a classic example of a commercial building on a residential street. We would always want to have a restaurant in that building, and hopefully it's always Rooney's. But we want to make sure the code is not in the way of, if that building ever went vacant, the code is not in the way of it being reoccupied as a business.
And I think I don't have off the top of my head the data, but I believe we did increase the number of the boutique mixed use districts. They were, I guess C1 is the closest thing you can get to it, but these are the small scale, usually in an intersection of commercial buildings, and I think they were downzoned quite a bit in the previous map, in the existing map, and now we've kind of we specifically went out and looked in the city for those little intersections with buildings that have either been converted to commercial or they were built as small scale commercial, and we zoned them as a boutique mixed use district so that they had more opportunity for allowed uses in those areas for commercial.
Yeah, and if the swipe map is a really useful tool to understand that from a big picture or even like at a quadrant level, to just kind of go back and forth with that swipe map and just see how many more areas have been converted from a residential district to a mixed use district. And it's either on those corridors or, like Rain said, at those little intersections or nodes where there's already something happening there.
I'm going to keep going through my list of questions here. A couple more meeting requests, which we talked about. Question about the change from R2 to MDR, encompassing a significant portion of neighborhoods in the South Wedge compared to other portions of the city. Why will there not be a public hearing in the Southeast? So I'll touch on the first point. I can tell you the MDR in the South Wedge is probably one of the least expanded areas. There are areas in the Northwest, Southwest, and Northeast, as well as portions of the Southeast, not in the South Wedge, that went from Wedge was already an R2 and is remaining in an MDR, with the caveat that, of course, the use restrictions are a bit different. The code is doing around affordable housing. It's very important for folks to understand the zoning code has more or less not much to do with affordable housing, only in the sense that we allow for residential dwelling units. So what that means is who is living in the property as it relates to percentages of area median income, or AMI, as folks know about, doesn't have anything to do with zoning. That's a housing policy, much related to state initiatives, but not the actual zoning code. Question around Airbnbs, which I know we've talked about. Another comment on carbon reduction, which I know Doreen and Kevin have spoke about. Another couple suggestions we will take a look at regarding comparing and contrasting.
I think we pretty much covered it, Matt.
Okay.
I think there's one real easy question I can answer about whether any of these details get put to a vote or only public hearings.
Yes, that's my next,
after
that's
this,
the next one on my list.
well, it's easy. So after this lengthy process of all these public meetings and hearings, absolutely it gets put to a vote. First, we have to go to the Planning Commission, which will hold its own hearing, and then they vote and make a recommendation to City Council as to whether to approve the zoning code and map. And then it goes to City Council, and they will also have a public hearing, and they will deliberate and decide whether to approve this. So we're not just having hearings for the sake of having hearings. There will be votes on this ultimately by City Council.
Yeah, thank you.
But also I think what might have been implied with that question is, are there votes about individual decisions within the map or the code? And that would not be the case. It's about the whole code as a whole. It's just how the process works.
Right, correct.
Yeah, thank you, Johanna, and thank you, Kevin. So yeah, a couple takeaways for tonight. I just want everyone to think about as they're going through this. We know there are a significant amount of, we know there is a significant amount of interest in this. We know there is also a level of attachment to it, which is fantastic. I love to talk zoning with anyone, and typically do. And to my colleagues on here, I see Johanna laughing because she knows I do this every day. So, but, keeping in mind that a balanced approach is the goal here. So, starting with Rochester 2034, putting a draft code together that has a significant amount of needs and a significant amount of input, many of which are competing with one another, right? So our role here is putting together that proposal, and keeping in mind what Johanna said, that this ultimately, which is a lengthy process, will end with going to the City Planning Commission for a recommendation, ultimately to City Council. And as Kevin said, it's the whole draft map and the whole draft code. And public hearings will happen for both of those as well. Just a reminder, submitting comments on the website, just click contact at the top of the page. You can submit your comments. We've already received a fair number of them, which is fantastic. And once the public comment period closes in January 31st of 2024, we will dig back into those to start reviewing those. Any other, I'm assuming we've answered the Q&A here. And folks, remember, we have the in-person meetings. You don't need to come to the one that's closest to you. You can go to a different one. As has already been said, we have been very cognizant of access to us. Certainly there are many folks that know me, but it's also important to ensure we're reaching folks that don't know how to reach me or don't know who I am. So we were strategic in location. We were strategic in how we set up the webinar, followed by the in-person meetings, and then of course the Environmental Commission.
Matt, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Is there somewhere that someone from the community can find the historical records of variances and special uses for a property?
If they're looking for a specific one, the easiest way is to just submit a Freedom of Information request.
Okay.
So if someone's looking for a history on a parcel, there's some legwork involved with locating those files, which are housed in a certain location, and we have to order them, pull them, and we can get them. So if someone is looking for previous approvals on a property. If you just go to cityofrochester.gov/FOIL, FOIL, which is Freedom of Information legislation, you can submit a request and we can get those for you.
And Johanna, can a council member propose an amendment instead of just voting yes or no to the whole code?
Yes, they can. But you know, there will be a lot of opportunity to discuss this whole process with city council. And I don't know how that will work exactly. I don't think we're going to have council members, proposing amendments to specific sections. I think we're going to have to assume that this is a package deal for the most part. But there's going to be plenty of opportunity for input, not only from the public, but obviously from council.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johanna. All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for spending your Wednesday evening with us. Much appreciated. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the conversation. And we will be seeing all of you and hopefully many more at our in-person meetings coming up in November, and then our hearings in December and January.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care and have a great evening.
Bye.